Hi, Jenny and colleagues. Really lovely to have this opportunity to share with you today. Thanks, Jenny, for asking me to do a few minutes of video to explain what I mean by climate conscious coach. So, this is an approach, a model, and I guess a whole mindset really that I've been working on for a few months now, and in a sense just captures the journey that I've been on for some time and kind of crystallizes where I've got to so far. I've tested this out with a few people, and I'm really pleased to say that it's going to be the basis of a series of webinars that I'm doing with ICF UK in September and October this year. And a couple of the colleagues will be collaborating with me, and who knows, it might turn into a longer series, and at some point I need to write it up. But for now, let me talk you through the model that I've developed so far and the thinking that I've created so far. So to do that, I'm just going to screen share one slide. Okay. So I'm hoping you can all see that screen share, and presumably there's a little picture of me in the top corner. So I'd just like to spend a little while, a few minutes if that, going through just explaining the 9 domains of what I've identified and what I've called the climate conscious coach. And then I know you specifically asked Jenny about actually what are some thoughts about how do I actually work with my clients in this? So I'll kind of bring that out as I go along, particularly in the latter part, if that's okay. So I'm going to start at the kind of 9 o'clock and work round, because of course as coaches we won't be surprised to hear that we need to start with ourselves and come back to ourselves continually in a kind of iterating inquiry. And so starting with ourselves as a climate conscious coach, I think includes a whole bunch of stuff around reflecting on where we are, where our understanding is, where our awareness is, how we are thinking and feeling about climate ecology, and also really importantly, where we are up to with our self-education. I don't think it's enough to be satisfied with thinking we know a bit and that's probably enough, because actually there's so much published now that makes things so clear. And so I think working at a professional executive coaching level without being up to date with at least the core essence of the climate and ecological science is just a requirement of a professional functioning in the here and now. So there's that knowledge piece and the awareness piece and the iterating the journey that we need to go on. Because if we don't go on that journey, we can't possibly support our clients who either are on that journey without knowing it, not on it yet, or are on it and struggling. So that takes us to the next piece around our own life. And this isn't linear, of course, it's iterative and runs in cycles, and it's never ending. But thinking about our own life is thinking about how we live personally and with our family, in a very practical sense, about the impact of our life and how we can continually think about how we reduce the impact, the carbon footprint, the ecological impact of our life. And we know a lot nowadays about what needs to happen there, and I've posted about it regularly on LinkedIn. It's not rocket science, we just need to make the changes, and we need to take responsibility and model that as coaches and be that change. Similarly, thinking about communities. So thinking about what are all the communities that we're part of. So of course, being part of the professional global coaching community is partly why I'm doing what I'm doing with the ICF and other things with the coaching community. And there's also, if we think about it, there are a whole bunch of communities we're part of. There's our local geographical community. There might be other professional bodies, alumni communities, faith communities, etc. And all of these communities are opportunities for us to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I'm realizing that's not necessarily specifically a coach piece, but I see the coach community as one of the communities that coaches need to play a part in to support and challenge along this journey. Business footprint, that's a fairly straightforward thing in a sense. It's the kind of practical stuff around translating what we know to be best practice to minimising the carbon and ecological footprint of our business. So thinking about our energy usage, our water usage, our travel, our food, our catering, our printing, or all of that stuff, and doing it from a an informed perspective, so that we are minimising the impact that a business itself has on the planet. Political engagement. Now, I would imagine a lot of maybe some coaches might think, "Oh, that's something to do with us as coaches." Well, of course it is. We're citizens, and if we're citizens, we're voters, or ideally we're voters. So therefore, we have a stake, and the evidence shows us clearly that both politicians and corporations have totally failed us in the last 30, 40 years in terms of actually engaging with and taking action on the climate and ecological crisis that we face. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are. So that's an opportunity for us all to reflect about actually how do we use our citizens, our capability and our empowerment as a citizen to be engaged. And that can come up in a lot of forms, thinking about how we vote, how we lobby our MPs or our other politicians. Maybe we want to engage in some non-violent direct action. There's a whole range of things that we can do, and coaches are a part of that, and part of the system, just like anyone else. So coming on to the right-hand side, which is maybe some more of that kind of real coach-specific piece, thinking about our practice. So for me, I think I went through this stage or phase, or however you want to see it, and I think a bunch of coaches are going through this, that it's like, okay, I get this, but that's in one part of my life, and then I coach, right? I have these clients, and they don't talk about this stuff, and we don't talk about it. It's all separate. Well, it isn't separate, is it? It's all part of the same thing. You can see from the picture, we're all part of planet Earth. We have only one planetary home, and we are in one currently rather collusive system that's in denial. So, in the way that we are able to, as coaches, with empathy, compassion, humility, understanding, awareness, connection, presence, and all of those great things that we bring, we need to bring this awareness into our practice. So I know, Jenny, I think you wanted me to mention some practical stuff. So some really practical things I've been doing recently with clients is with new clients. So in chemistry conversations, I've been being really clear and explicit about my values and what's non-negotiable. So my values around how important focusing on sustainability, climate change, and so on is to my value base, and it's a non-negotiable. And that enabling a conversation about actually inquiring with the potential clients about what's their non-negotiables. And interestingly, so far, it's brought up quite an appreciative response from potential clients, some of which have gone on to want to work with me. Others have faded away, but that's okay because everyone's in a different place with this. So I think being explicit up front, and then actually, of course, that then allows all sorts of conversations to come out. And whether clients then continue to want to work with us or not, or whether that just prompts them to think differently about what they were going to do, to my mind, it doesn't really matter. It's all part of our practice. So being really clear up front, and then that sort of sets the frame potentially for our conversations. What else have I done? So another practical example with our recent client session, I think if you have client conversations where the scope is anything to do with purpose or legacy, that is a very easy area to start bringing in this bigger frame. Because I think the challenge that I would put to professional coaches is, if the narrative around climate and the state of the planet and what we're really here to do isn't coming into our conversations in some way, then I think I would offer that the framing for that conversation is probably too small. We need to zoom out and bring that frame into the conversation. So bringing our value base in early on is a way to kind of bring that into the frame, into the field in the conversation. I had a conversation recently with a senior leader where talking about purpose and legacy, and knowing that this leader had young children, helped us to talk about actually if he was leading the organisation wanting to be a CEO, then how would he be being CEO if he was leading the organisation for his daughter's generation and for it to be an organisation that his daughter would work in? And that led to an interesting conversation, and I reflected the opportunity to think about actually bringing that even to a bigger lens of thinking about actually, well, some Indigenous communities think about how would I lead, or thinking about what we do for 7 generations hence, which is a completely different mindset. When this leader was talking about, as many organisations do, they think about their financial return for the next quarter, the next year at most. So actually bringing into the conversation about, what if we were leading like we were leading for the next 7 generations? What would that bring in? And you can see the bodily reaction of, oh my God, yeah, I have never thought of that ever. And wouldn't it be incredibly impactful if we do? So it's going to be very interesting to see where that conversation goes. But there are a range of ways we can bring it into our practice. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavour. Our ethics, coming on further around the circle, just to complete the circle before I close the video, is our ethics for me is obviously some of the backdrop to our practice, and for me it's about decision making and both around in the moment with clients and also about how we run our business, the business we choose to do, the client work we choose to take on. So, what is the ethical frame that we want to use at all of those levels? So, for example, I've personally pledged that I'm never going to fly again. So turning down work when people are offering me work that involves flying to the US or Europe or wherever. I'll do that work virtually if it's possible. Otherwise, it won't happen, and a more local coach will ideally do it. So yeah, that's got consequences, but that is congruent with my value base, and actually bashing down this wall between my personal and professional self and my real beliefs and values has been incredibly liberating and incredibly empowering. Yes, I'll be financially poorer, but the emergency that we're facing is such that actually that's not as important as it might have been. So reflection, supervision. So I guess this comes in, of course, as coaches, we self-reflect regularly and ideally, of course, work with supervisors on a periodic basis. And Jenny, I guess you're running this group to support that co-supervision or peer supervision, which is brilliant. So thinking about actually, if we're supervisors, how do we bring this lens and this scale of thinking and mindset shift, because it's a humongous mindset shift, how do we begin to bring this into our supervision, both as a supervisee and a supervisor? I think there's lots of potential to think about that. And finally, well, this kind of loops back to self really, but this supporting adaptation. So this alone needs a little bit of explanation, and again, it depends where we're at with our understanding with the climate science and so on. That adaptation needs to happen on so many levels for humanity to be able to live through and with what's coming. So if we pay attention to the climate science, we know that even if we do take a lot of action to stay within the 2-degree warming that we absolutely have to do to avoid the tipping points and the hot house Earth scenario. Even if we stay within that, we're going to have a world which is very, very different than it is now, and has a heck of a lot of challenges with enormous transformation that needs to take place. And adaptation, therefore, is coping with that psychologically, emotionally, supporting businesses and organisations, public, private, voluntary, community, to get their heads around what that is, adapt to it psychologically, relationally, and also in practical terms, and support leaders and managers in needing to challenge themselves to go on that transformational journey. So there is an awful lot of exploration that we can do as coaches to support adaptation, and the adaptation will have to happen, and we are ideally placed, thousands of us across the planet, to support that adaptation in a relational and a business sense and an organisational sense. So I hope that's given you a flavour of a gallop through the 9 domains of what I see as currently in my reflective journey and self-inquiry as the aspects of being a climate conscious coach. I hope you have a great conversation, and really look forward to hearing more. I'd love to hear what comes out of your conversation and be part of that ongoing inquiry. Okay, bye.